Back in 1923, a New York Times reporter asked Everest pioneer George Mallory why he wanted to climb the peak. And Mallory's answer is legendary. Because it's there. His facetious answer hides a deeper truth, though. Articulating this kind of extreme motivation is difficult, even if you're the protagonist. Last year I made a documentary about an early climbing film and its tortuous creation. El Capitan by Fred Padula would go on to be award-winning, but it took nearly a decade to make and documented an ascent of the nose route on El Capitan, Yosemite's most famous wall. I saw Fred's film when I was 16, and there was one scene that was etched in my mind. It was climber Richard McCracken, penduluming across the granite wall, rope tied around his waist, 1,500 feet above the valley floor. That image has inspired me in a lifetime of climbing. I interviewed Richard, and I didn't ask him why he climbed, but he told me anyway. And he gave me one of the most lyrical answers I've heard about this kind of motivation, and it captured all of the beauty I'd seen in Fred's film. But there was a curious detail. That moment that had catalysed my own ambition was Richard's last climb. And the question wasn't, why would you climb? When you listen to him, it's how could you stop?
Oh, shit. Where the fuck are my swings?
You could tell how good a piton is by how well it rang. If it just sang out, you knew that you had a good solid grip on the rock with the piton, so you knew you could fall on it with the assurance that it wasn't going to pull out. And I've often likened the sound of pitons to gamelan orchestras, for instance. We have a variety of tones. The 6-inch pitons, which were called bongs, were made of aluminum, actually, rather than steel. And the bongs rang like the bells of a cathedral or something.
The summit overhangs look further away than ever now.
Around Berlin, a guy fishing in approximately the same place for high nutrients, and you'll have, a little strange ecological system built up.
There's a long way to summit from here, isn't it?
Strange lichens growing.
A lot of overhangs, too.
Balls are flying around, how they're slowly replaced by bats.
I mean, I'm not a religious person, really. I'm an agnostic when it comes to my Christianity. Although I think there are gods. I think they live in the world. They are the world in a way. And I could experience that up on the rocks in places where I never experienced that anywhere else, To me, that was the biggest attraction. And being with the people, climbing with the people, it's very special people when you climb with them. Anybody that climbs is a special person, I think, at least the ones I've climbed with. And there's something unique about them. They're willing to put the risk out there to learn what they have to learn from being, committing yourself to something that you're afraid to commit yourself to. And to me, that was the important. That's what I got out of it. And I think that's one of the reasons I could walk away from it, is I got what I was going to get out of it. I was ready to go on to some other kind of experience. Well, I was more or less living in Yosemite Valley, along with a few other climbers. In those days, not everybody, it wasn't very popular, except on weekends. So sometimes me and a couple other climbers have the valley to ourselves. Actually, most of us we felt that valley was a special place. We were very possessive of it, as people can get, I guess, with things. It was kind of our climbing place. It's hard to convey that now because so many so many climbers are there and so many people go there, but there weren't that many tourists, actually. I mean, there were enough, but there weren't traffic jams or anything close to that. And very few climbers in the early 60s. I can remember one summer when the only 3 climbers in Camp 4 were myself, Chuck Pratt, and Steve Roper. And then on the weekends, Royal and other people who had honest jobs would come up, but the rest of us were just climbing bums. 3 of us were climbing bums. And that was kind of the atmosphere in the valley at that time. It was our place, you know. You know, I had pretty much stopped climbing when we made the film. I had done some big wall first ascents in various places around North America. About 1965, I had moved to Aspen, Colorado, and bought a mining claim outside of town at 10,000 feet up in the mountains. And I wasn't doing any climbing at all when I got a call from Glenn saying, you want to come be in this climbing film with the nose. So I went back to the valley, my wife and I got back into shape and we did the film. And then I went back to Colorado and I did a couple climbs with a young friend there. I actually gave him all my climbing gear. Well, I kept a few pitons and a few carabiners for, keepsakes, but in my mind, I had really given up climbing. I mean, I started because my answer I tell people was in the end, because I just had to. Something had attracted me so much, I couldn't help myself. As far as stopping goes, I think I'd done enough. It was like an exploration. I climbed for 15 years, seen a bit of the world. Once in a while, I look back on it and I kind of missed it, but I didn't feel attracted to go back to it. Climbers I climb with, like Royal, for instance, Royal Robbins, he climbed until he had arthritis and couldn't really do it anymore. To me, climbing wasn't necessarily about getting to the top. And I'd climb things part way and then come down. I didn't feel like going all the way sometimes. Smaller climbs, of course. When you start out on a big time, you bloody well want to get to the top. I think it was the experience of being on the rock. It was, to me, like a kind of a spiritual experience. There's something special about sitting, especially on the big wall, sitting 1,000 or 2,000 feet off the ground on a ledge, looking down, watching the world, or looking out across, miles and miles of mountains. You climb in Canada, you do that. And, I climb Mount Robson, huge mountain in Canada, and the Bugaboos. And when you're on those mountains, you can see thousands of other mountains if you keep looking around. There's something about being in that situation that was very special to me that I'm not necessarily everybody felt that way. It was more like a sport to them, I guess.
Okay, John Blake.